Welcome into WeAreSC and our five things after USC's 41-28 win at Stanford. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Marc Kulkin and Greg Katz. Greg, I'm going to start with you, I'm going to run down the five things and we'll go individually through them. But for our five things, what we do post game is we have our player of the game, our play of the game, the expectation you had coming in that was met, the surprise for you, and then your biggest takeaway moving forward. So let's start with that first thing, your player of the game, Greg.
Well, it'd be very simple to go with Caleb Williams because, again, he had a magnificent first half, to say the least. But I'm going to go with Jordan Addison. I thought that he just did some backbreaking things for the Stanford defense, both short and long. The breaking the tackle and maintaining his balance. And the first one was great athletic ability. And I think the second one, of course, was the 75-yard long strike. And he is an amazing wide receiver. I'll tell you right now, I talked with somebody who worked the NFL for years covering the sport, an expert at it. He says, this guy can start right now for half the NFL teams. And he won't get an argument from me. But, God, I thought he was magnificent in the first half.
Yeah, for me, you said it's simple. I'm a simple guy. I'm gonna go with Caleb Williams. 20 for 27, 341 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Yeah, the second half was, you want to see him maybe on the right page with some of his receivers there towards the end, but just outstanding. The way he kind of captains this team, captains the offense, and really kind of there's so much confidence, right? Whenever he takes the field and is taking snaps for USC. So that's it for me. Marc, who do you have?
Yeah, you know what? I gotta be a little contrarian here. You guys took the offense. I gotta go defense. This might be a defense, in progress. They're still working to get better. However, they have now created 8 turnovers through 2 games. And someone would say, wow, that's a lot. Well, Erik, we looked at each other and then we heard the stat. This happened in 2020? In their first 2 games versus Utah and Wazoo. So I'm going to go with Max Williams. That first interception when it looked like Stanford was going to score, they decided to take the ball first. It was a gamble. And Max Williams picks the ball up in the end zone, starts the process in motion. Later in the game, separates the ball carrier from the ball, fumble, another opportunistic play. I think you got to give credit to the defense in this game. As well as the offense played in the first half, it all started on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, let's go to the second thing, and I'm gonna jump in first here because it goes with you, Marc, and this is the play of the game. I'm gonna say the Max Williams fumble right down there at the goal line. It was 21-7 USC, and so Stanford's not, it's not late in the game or anything. Stanford's not going to take the lead there, but you start going touchdown for touchdown and that sort of thing, and maybe it's a different game for him to be able to force that fumble. USC gets the ball, they drive 98 yards, go all the way down, and they score and go up 21-7, and that's the point where you feel like, okay, this thing is pretty well taken care of here. So again, I think there's probably a few defensively. Greg mentioned anything Jordan Addison did there too, but for me, I'm going to go with Max Williams. Greg, how about you? Play of the game?
Well, you know what? I actually I think there's 2 plays of the game, but I think you guys are entirely correct with Max Williams. No argument there. I still like Addison's 75-yard touchdown. That was just a backbreaker to me. And I agree with Marc on some of the turnovers in the last 2 games. They've really made a difference. But, I still think, and I don't want to get into this, but I think the defense still has some work to do, and leave it at that.
Yeah. Sure, Marc, how about you? Play of the game?
I'm going to stick with it, but I'm going to go with Mekhi Blackmon because it looked like USC couldn't get out of their way. They kept giving Stanford opportunities to keep that drive alive. It had the flavor of 2021 written all over it. And then they created another turnover. And it led to another touchdown, 14-0. I've talked about this. USC's defense doesn't have to be great. They have to be serviceable and good. and give the team extra offensive possessions. That was the recipe for the win tonight.
I think the interesting thing about that one, the Blackman one, is it comes after a wild series, right? Stanford looks like they've scored a touchdown. Receiver comes down, the heel hits out of bounds. He's called out. They're going to kick a field goal. USC jumps off sides. And we saw that last year. USC jumped off sides on a couple of field goal tries. Right. And the other team ended up sending the offense back out there and scoring. Stanford did it. And it looked like, oh, here it is again. Stanford's going to do it again. And so the difference in results there on that play, huge for Mekhi Blackman to make that interception.
14-0. It's the difference between 14-0 and 7-7.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different...
Absolutely. So let's go our third thing now. That's the expectation you had coming into this game. Greg, we'll start with you here. Expectation you had coming into the game and you saw it. It delivered.
Well, my expectation is that the offense would roll. Although I have to say, I don't think there's anybody who could have said they would roll 9 times in a row with that incredible performance. I mean, it was video game-like. It was stunning. I think that I didn't have any illusions that in the second half that probably wouldn't continue. But for a first half, and especially in my opinion, for this to be on national television, for everybody in the world, recruits in the country, if they just tuned in for the first half, I'll tell you, SC will be in the top 6 in the country when the polls come out, based on the upsets of Notre Dame and Texas A&M, and now Baylor has lost. It depends on if you watch the second half, you might temper your enthusiasm a bit, but at least for the first half, it was a tremendous infomercial for USC football, and I think we could all agree it's like going 5 for 5 in a baseball game, and you just hit for the cycle. That expectation was met. That tells you what they're capable of doing. Can they do it for 4 quarters? That will be in the future. But a magnificent performance, I thought, in the first half.
Mark, how about you? What'd you see coming in this one?
Yeah, they met the expectation on offense, especially in the first half. Caleb Williams is 20 for 27, 341 yards, 4 touchdowns. He just had his first Heisman moment in a USC uniform. So, and not only that, but this team was able to, I won't belabor it on the negative. They met the expectation. They showed well offensively. I think they even showed better defensively, despite the yards given up. The turnovers kind of really balanced scales on that. So they met my expectation as far as proving that they belong in the top 10. We'll talk about how high they jump later.
Yeah, for me, it's the fact that USC has these athletes now, and Stanford doesn't have the same athletes that USC does. And this is, again, one off season, one sort of transfer class, and building up what you had coming back for USC. And that was the expectation for me, is that USC would put its athletes on the field and Stanford would put its athletes on the field, and USC would do what it did offensively in that first half. And really defensively too, when they had to make plays, they showed up, physically, athletically. And it's not something that we have seen from USC consistently the last few years. And now it's an expectation, right? You have Caleb Williams going out and Jordan Addison and all these guys going out there. Yeah, you expect them to do this, and they are really, really following through on it. We'll go to the other side on that. We'll go to the fourth thing now. Greg, back to you here, and that's your surprise from this one.
Well, my surprise is a disappointment. I thought the offense not to score a touchdown in the second half was a nightmare from last year, to be honest with you. And I just couldn't believe that you could be that good in the first half and be conversely that, I don't know what the right word is to be polite about it, unable to score a touchdown in this. They just seemed so out of sorts in the second half. And I want to see, my surprise was that they scored no TDs. And I think that, you know what, I guess if you go 5 for 5 in a baseball game, you could go 0 for 5 the next day. But
it's a cruel.
What's that?
It's a cruel game, Greg.
It is a cruel game, no question about it. But the good news is, you know what the capabilities are, and I'm sure if anyone, this is going to be a test for Lincoln Riley. You know, he's going to play a good team next week in Fresno State that lost on the last play of the game to come back by Oregon State. It was really amazing. But let's see how much the team improves in their focus next week. And what I think probably would be a sellout crowd. I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
Mark, how about you? You're surprised from this one?
How sloppy they played in the second half. Just the totality of it all with the penalties, not being able to score a touchdown, having to settle for 2 field goals. That was really, I think, the biggest surprise. It almost felt like, Graham Harrell had entered the room again.
Don't say that.
Well, the play calling even seemed off. And Lincoln Riley, to his credit, after the game said, even the coaches have to get better. They acknowledged that, there were things that they could have done better. I don't know, Eric, you heard the words, and he didn't want to say it, but he kind of said it when he said, 12 months ago, this team, and the implication was, we got our butts kicked at home, and we probably lose this game tonight as well. At least that was my takeaway from that quote, the way it kind of came across. And the players looking like, yeah, you know what? You're right.
Yeah. I mean, my surprise, it's what you guys said, right? That's the right answer, is that all we've seen from this offense is it absolutely churning down the field. Before this game, in the Rice game, there's one drive where you kind of have some hiccups. And then in this game, it's, like Greg, like you said, 5 in a row and just marching down there. So you got to a point where you just didn't think they could mess up. They were playing 11 on 5. It seemed like every time they went out and took the ball. But since you guys went there, I'm going to say 4 takeaways again for the defense. I mean, sure. Mark, you mentioned that they've had back-to-back games in recent years with 8 total turnovers, but this is a Stanford team where, you got a quarterback in Tanner McKee, you got a running back in EJ Smith. Those are 2 of the better guys at those positions. And those 2 guys coughed it up 4 times with, 2 interceptions. Again, the quarterback gets credit for the interceptions. One of them goes off the wide receiver, but whatever. So the Tanner McKee throws 2 picks and EJ Smith fumbles it twice. And those were forced fumbles. Those were big hit forced fumbles from USC. And so again, I wouldn't have guessed, they're going to win the turnover battle 4-0 again in game 2. So that would be my surprise. Again, if I had to pick something that wasn't the offense sort of falling apart.
Did Caillou Blue Kelly get off the bagel? Did he record a stat?
He ended up with 1 tackle, but you bring that up because we mentioned that he tore USC apart. I mean, last year his game was unbelievable. I think I remember it was 7 tackles and 4 pass deflections, had an interception that he returned for a touchdown. He's the guy that Jordan Addison got behind on the big 75-yard touchdown pass. And he was held, without a tackle for quite a while in this one. So
that is a surprise column for me then.
You talk about the change in 1 year between last year and this year. All right. And so let's finish it up. Our 5th thing, Greg, going back to you to start. And that's your takeaway from this one as you look at the rest of USC's schedule.
Well, I think it's fairly simple for me. I can be a little bit more objective with this question. They need to improve their consistency on offense. It's like home run or strikeout, the way this last game was. And they have to play 4 quarters of outstanding offense, at least good to outstanding offense. But I have some real concerns about the defense against a really strong physical running team. Granted, I get the turnovers and the interceptions. They were great. But you can't rely on that every game. It may be that they do this for, much of the, they're in the right position to make either tip plays or great interceptions, but they give up so many yards rushing, and they give up passing wise. They've got a Swiss cheese defense right now. I was surprised listening to Lincoln Riley after the game. tell a national audience that he was more or less pleased with the defense and tried to build it up. And I kind of said, don't go there. That's the first time I think there was a credibility gap for me personally. But if he wants to do that, it makes it better to ease into next week's, I'm sure, intense practices. But no, they have to get better on offense for 4 quarters. And they have, I don't know if they can actually get better on defense against the rush and passing wise, but they got to do it because when they face Utah and maybe even UCLA to some degree, they're going to have their hands full. So hopefully they can do that. That would be my hope.
Sure. Yeah, Mark, how about you? Your takeaway?
The 9 penalties for 100 yards. I really thought that was in the trash can. And granted, some of those calls were sketchy, I guess is the best way to put it. There were still 7 too many. Holding on offense. It was just, again, that was probably the biggest thing, my takeaway from the game. I was like, wow, they had 9 penalties for 100 yards. And it overshadows, Travis Dye having 100 yards on the ground. 4 more touchdown passes, 4 more turnovers by the defense. So when USC is winning, and I don't know, you and I talked about this on the sideline, it was a win, but it didn't feel as good as it should have been. And maybe we've already have it. Has Lincoln Riley already set that expectation for us where even 41-28 isn't good enough on the road? That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I'm kind of with all of you. And I think what's interesting, just to your last point, Stanford against USC last year, right? An unbelievable blowout. It derailed USC season. They had to fire Clay Helton right away. 42-28. It's the same game that USC just put on Stanford. So it's interesting to see like the difference when you look at when Stanford does it to USC, when USC does it to Stanford. And my takeaway is a few things, and I'm always going to cheat on something like this when I have to pick one, and I'll do 2. But yeah, it's the fact that a 41-28 pretty gosh darn convincing win over Stanford 1 year after you were happy to keep a Cal game close at the end of the season, you chalk that up as like, oh, there's a lot to work on. This team's not great yet. Like that's a pretty good spot to be in, I think, week 2 when you can build. Now, to Greg's point, the defense and the run issues, my takeaway from that is I don't know where the answer comes from. The transfer portal in terms of bringing guys in and having them play right now, that's closed. That's not an option anymore. So you kind of have who you have, and there are going to be some teams that can run the ball. Oregon State is on the schedule. Utah is on the schedule. No idea what Notre Dame is right now, but by the time USC plays them, maybe they can run it. UCLA is down there too. So yeah, the takeaway is how do you find those answers, and is that ultimately the thing that cost them a win? I don't think anybody is sitting here thinking, yeah, this is an undefeated team and nobody can touch them. Potentially that loss is coming at some point, and yeah, that ability to stop the run consistently and not give up these big chunk plays, that is for sure going to be something to watch, I think, going down the line. But for now, this is again, not as convincing as it looked at one point, but still a convincing road win against Stanford. And if you're sitting here a year ago saying that's what's going to happen in 2022, I think you're pretty happy with it. So again, that's our look at our 5 things from USC beating Stanford 41-28 on the road. Thank you for watching. For Greg Katz, for Marc Kulkin, this is Erik McKinney. Thanks for watching WeAreSC.